And now we've come to the wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. Personally, this is my favourite and I believe everyone's favourite of Series 3. Yes, I know there's an obvious reason, but if you were to take him out of the episode, it still would have been a good episode. After Sarah Jane starts acting suspiciously, Luke, Clyde, Ronnie and K9 investigate. They discover she has a boyfriend, Peter Dalton, and they are going to get married. At the wedding, an old enemy returns. As the gang find themselves trapped in a time loop in Limbo, can a very special friend from the past save Sarah Jane, her friends, and the entire planet Earth from the wrath of the Trickster? Well, you've seen his other stories, so you pretty much know what's going to happen. Now, I'll get to the obvious good thing later, but I'm going to talk about the episode as a whole without that thing. When it comes to wedding stories in TV shows, they're not really that good to look through. The characters are either forced to marry, have a crush, get married, which then ends up with them splitting up. It's kind of forced. However, this one doesn't feel forced. It's actually pretty natural. We see them get to know each other, meet their family, have dinner before the whole proposal. And honestly, Sarah Jane and Peter Dalton? They actually make a good couple. If this wasn't all part of the Trickster's plan, they would have been happy together. Nigel Havers plays Peter Dalton, and he is charming as ever. I mean, it's Nigel Havers, he always plays those type of roles. It is obvious that he is the Trickster's slave, but you actually feel sorry for him. He doesn't want to die, he just wants to be happy. It's not his fault that the Trickster tricked him. I think out of all the victims in the show, Peter Dalton was probably the best out of all of them, especially when he stood up to the Trickster. Speaking of which, this ends up as the climax of the Trickster's story in the show. While I do admit his white cloak is probably not the best idea, but I can't help but think that maybe this would have been his victory suit. And his plan to make Sarah Jane be happy enough to stop saving the world is actually would have made a good series finale. Plus his scenes with you-know-who is just exciting to watch. I just really wish we get him in Doctor Who. Sure, we get references to him, but not a full appearance. And this scene proves that the Trickster and you-know-who would make a brilliant rivalry. Plus, who else could stand up to the Trickster in Limbo with an electronic hand than Clyde Langer? How badass could this guy get? Now let's talk about the one thing everyone talks about in this episode. David Tennant as the Doctor. I know, I found it amazing as well. I love seeing him with Sarah Jane, I love seeing him with the gang, I love seeing him with the Trickster, and I love seeing him with K9. He's definitely having the most fun in this episode. In fact, everyone is having the most fun. But this is still Sarah Jane's show. It's great to see the Doctor make his first appearance in a spin-off show, and on such a wonderful occasion, especially for Sarah Jane. If you were a friend of the Doctor, wouldn't you want to invite him to your wedding? To her, the Doctor has been her best friend, and he had to be at her wedding. Sure, his appearance at the wedding was probably at the wrong time in terms of wedding circumstances, but he had to be there. Like in Doctor Who, the relationship between the Doctor and Sarah Jane is just precious. You can tell they love working with each other, and you can tell how much of a long life they've had. As friends, as companions, maybe more than just lovers. It's nice that we get the team to get a look in the TARDIS console room. But I do love the goodbye scene. Since this episode was released around the time of David Tennant's ending reign as the Doctor, I couldn't help but cry at David Tennant's face. To him, this is probably the last time he gets to see Sarah Jane. That is until the end of time. And the dialogue, completely based off Sarah Jane's departure in the Hand of Fear. It's just a beautiful ending. I guess the only nitpicks I have is that maybe the story is a little predictable. If you're someone who has watched the Sarah Jane adventures from the very beginning and has looked over all the Trickster's episodes, then you know exactly what's going to happen. You know when the twist appears, you know who is the slave, you know how it's going to end, and you know the Trickster is going to be defeated. So while the plot is nothing really that original, it's the execution that makes the experience more brilliant. Again, like the temptation of Sarah Jane Smith, this would have been a good finale to Series 3. Not to say what we got was bad, but this one could have been better. The idea of Sarah Jane having to choose to give up saving the world and be happy, or continue saving the world and lose her true love, that is both thought-provoking and challenging. Plus, this would have made the Doctor's appearance in the show even more amazing if it was the waiting between the episodes lasted longer. Oh well, it's just a nitpick. Do I really need to explain what else is good about this episode? You all remember the characters, you all know how great the Doctor's appearance is, you all know the best moments, and if you're a fan of both the Sarah Jane Adventures and Doctor Who, then this is the one episode you really don't want to miss. The more you watch it, the more it only gets better and better. It's a perfect TV crossover, done at the very best. I know they're both in the same universe, but come on, this is probably one of the best TV show crossovers in years. I'd say get your invitation and go and see it, but let's face it, you already have.